The highlights of this evening's program. The Charity Birds Hospital in Chandni Chowk, the last refuge of Delhi's flying population. You'll understand what makes people like Om Prakash click. And you'll savor the strong flavor of a tradition preserved for a name. The name of Parathe Wali Gali. The cacophonous hustle and bustle of the entrance to Chandni Chowk subsides as one enters the premises of the great Digambar Jain Lal Mandir. And as one moves into the Charity Birds Hospital situated in the same compound, the only sound that breaks the stillness is the soft crooning of hundreds of birds, billing and cooing their general sense of satisfaction at the world. The bird hospital is an ancient concept, probably as old as Lord Mahavir himself, who proclaimed that the living world is much, much more than its human component. As part of his teachings, he instructed man to serve all of life in all its forms. Since then have existed the Pinjra poles, hospitals, not for human patients, but for those members of the animal kingdom as might need treatment or succor. This hospital was started by a Jain Muni more than 60 years ago.
इस अस्पताल की स्थापना आज से लगभग 64 वर्ष पूर्व आचार्य शांति सागर जी महाराज, जो कि जैन धर्म के बहुत बड़े संत हुए हैं, उनकी प्रेरणा से.
This hospital was started about 64 years ago under the guidance of Acharya Shanti Sagarji Maharaj, a great Jain Muni. In the beginning, the hospital was operated on a small scale. Space was limited, and neither was there much in the way of instruments and facilities. The number of birds treated was also low, about 10 or 15 a day. Due to the humanitarian feelings of various people and the kindness of donors, the hospital came to be what it is today. Now between 50 and 60 birds are given treatment here daily.
और ये इतने बड़े लेवल में आज पहुंचा, और आजकल यहाँ पर नियमित रूप से 50 से 60 पक्षी आते हैं और उसका ट्रीटमेंट यहाँ पे किया जाता है. The methods of treatment are quite basic. The majority of the patients are victims of injury rather than disease. Therapy, therefore, begins with the meticulous disinfection and dressing of the wound. To combat the weakness brought on by the wound, adequate and regular nourishment is provided. The diet is augmented with dosages of vitamins and minerals which help bring the bird's strength back. Birdseed, in fact, is one of the requirements of the hospital, which concerned donors can fill. यहाँ जो ये संस्था चल रही है, ये मेनली दान के ऊपर ही चल रही है. तो दान हम केस मनी.
This institution runs basically on charity. Donations can come in cash or in the form of grain or medicines for the birds. The hospital is run by Jain institutions and the financial management is looked after by them.
और बाकी जो इसका फाइनेंशियल है, मैनेजमेंट वही देखते हैं.
As their health improves, birds graduate from living in solitary cubbyholes to large communal cages. The next rung in the ladder, one floor above, is the vast hall-like recovery room. Once fully recovered, the birds are invariably set free. Liberty is the last stop here. The variety of birds which pass through these wards is very diverse. Pigeons and doves constitute the largest fraction of the population, but other species are also in evidence. A peacock does a Tarzan imitation on a wooden swing. Hens and parrots cackle and cluck. There's even an odd rabbit or two, looking slightly lost in this convocation of birds. There are certain admission restrictions, though. No meat-eating bird is allowed. Crows, kites, eagles, and other birds of prey are left out in the cold by this regulation. Arrangements have been made for wild birds to feed and drink here. We mix medicines periodically in their water for deworming and vitamin and antibiotic therapy. The roof, in fact, is crowded. It's not just the water and the abundant seed, it's also the assurance of memory that reminds the birds that this is a haven to be trusted. And so they flock back, even now that they are living free. On the other side of the bird hospital, birds of a different feather flock together. Standing beside ungainly three-legged devices, these men make some strange and apparently mystical gestures with their hands as they practice their art. Used as we are to the modern world of pocket snapshots, it takes a little while to realize that these are cameras and these men are photographers. The doyen of these curbside clickers is Om Prakash. Watching him at work is like seeing a well-maintained vintage car on the go. You are struck with awe at the beauty of an age gone by and with surprise at the fact that something from that age still works. Om Prakash has been working here for 28 years now. Before that, his father did the same job at the same place, using the same camera. My father used to do the same work. I learned from him, and since then have been at it. No one makes this camera anymore, and it's too expensive to buy. The camera is quite a remarkable piece of equipment, more of a compact studio than a mere camera. Inside the case is everything that Om Prakash requires to go from click to pick. This holistic device allows Om Prakash and his fellow photographers to come up with finished passport-sized pictures in a matter of minutes. Our work is to satisfy urgent requirements. We take pictures for forms, applications, and identity cards, etc. We can give a customer his photograph in a matter of minutes. The quick click process involves using a pinhole to record the image on photographic paper, but in negative. Om Prakash then photographs this negative to convert it into a regular black and white print. Developing this inside the camera body, he tosses the prints into a bucket of water to wash the chemicals off. Drying is done on the pillars between which the cameras stand. Along the walls, opposite each photographer, stands his display showcase. Here it is possible to see the results of the art of cutting, tampering with the photographs to produce interesting effects. The most common application of this technique is in getting Hindi film heroes and heroines into clinching poses with the men on the street. These pavement photographers have gone from selling images to selling dreams. And even when the images have faded away, the dreams linger on. Chandni Chowk, the lifeline of trade in Old Delhi, the symbol of life in the walled city, home to a host of oddities left over from the ages of the Mughals and the British tradition. Tradition is immortal here. Old habits die hard. It's more the desire to preserve a tradition than actual financial viability that sees paratha shops still in existence in Parathe Wali Gully. This narrow and skewed thoroughfare leading off from the main Chandni Chowk Boulevard is today just like any of the other tributary lanes. Only its name and the 3 paratha shops that doggedly persist remind one that this was once a special place. 14 of these parathe-walas jostled for pride of place here. The story of Parathe Wali Gully began when the British established their major court in Delhi close by. One of the original parathe-walas was Pandit Gyan Prasad, whose shop still stands here. The latest descendant in the Pandit's line talks about that time.
ऐसा है कि पहले ये दरीबा खुर्द था और ये हम लोगों ने पराठे का काम जो है इजाद किया और धीरे धीरे जो है 14 दुकानें थी तो 14 दुकानों में अब से 3 ही रह गए हैं अब ये समझ लीजिए
We started our lives here. Where there were once 14 shops, now only 3 remain. Consider it the ways of the times. Consider it the lure of money. Whatever. Some people have accepted large sums to give up their shops. Some just gave up and started other work. We have remained because we don't know how to do anything other than make parathas. My father worked here before me and his father before him. Even at that time, it was parathas that were made here. They were cooked in large quantities, in bulk. And it was the Tangawalas who ate here, not people like you. Catching the scent of great potential business, some of the vendors who used to function off the roadside invested in roofs over their heads and fittings that suited their new clientele. Soon the money was rolling in, and so were hopeful new parathe-walas. And so the name was born. This was more than a century ago. In fact, the shops which still remain proudly display signs which boast of 5 generations, 11 to 12 decades of service. In this time, naturally, much has changed. 100 years ago, a paratha sold for 3 paisa. Today, it costs 100 times that. And even then, the rising tide of inflation threatens to sink the business. Many changes have taken place over the years. There is a considerable difference in the raw material. Many of the ingredients are not available. Even the desi ghee is now made from cream. Earlier, dahi was used. The wheat lacks protein. It's partly because of the lack of material, partly because of the high costs, but the parathas are no longer what they used to be. The pressures of financial viability have already claimed 11 victims. The gully is now a heterogeneous commercial center.
We didn't like it in the village, so we opened this shop. If our children don't like it here, they'll start their sari shop. If they like it, the shop is here.
The 3 paratha shops, still in evidence, have used a tenuous shield against the onslaught of the times, the protection of the name of the gully. They persevere so that the name of Gully Parathewali may be justified, and they are not entirely without their rewards. Even today, while people complain about the size of the parathas, the quality of the sabzi, and the hygiene of the locality, the shops retain the loyalty of a few devoted customers.
I've been coming here for the last 12 or 13 years. I would come even if I were 20 miles away. The thing is, you get very good parathas here even now. These 3 shops keep up the name of Parathewali Gali.
The tradition of Parathewali Gully is preserved by these few diehards, the dogged shopkeepers and their devoted customers. The teeth of time may have bitten large chunks out of this tradition, but there are still parathas and there is still hope. Next week, we bring you face to face with a man with a prickly obsession, collecting cacti. Then we'll take you on a guided tour of the most urbanized of villages, where buffaloes are as common as boutiques, and conclude with a restaurant of a different flavor. Highlights of this evening's program: Bhagwan Prasad Saxena and his prickly passion, the coming into fashion of the village that is Hos Khas, and the cuisine of Karims, food fit for a king. For some people, it's the thorns that make life interesting. Take, for example, the family of Dr. Bhagwan Prasad Saxena, a lecturer at Deshbandhu College. Their house seems just another of the many anonymous residences in the crowded locality of Ramnagar, near the New Delhi railway station. But seen from a bird's-eye view, it suddenly stands out. Where the majority of roofs in the area are littered with junk, or at best are clean and empty, this house bears on its head an astounding variety of plants of a certain kind, cacti.
Most of us will associate this breed of flora with arid wastelands, and few of us would give them a second thought, dismissing them as ugly, thorn-clad plants. But to the eyes of Dr. Saxena, his wife Bina and son Shikhar, this is a gem of beauty, of great diversity, and of considerable versatility. A collection like this, without doubt, is not the fruit of a passing fancy, but the outcome of a magnificent and lifelong obsession.
I started my plant collections in 1958, and I have some plants which are surviving, and they are about 30 to 35 years old plants. I have near about 1,500 varieties with me, and I do not keep the common varieties. I keep the rare varieties, and which are bizarre looking, colored varieties, crustaceans and all that. And I am collecting them from abroad, from growing them from seeds, and from buying from several nurseries in India, and exchanging with other people.
It was evidently a contagious obsession. It quickly spread to his wife Bina, who was quite eager to share with him his first love. Now they tend their nursery together, and there are no botanical secrets between them.
मेरे सामने जिस समय पौधे खरीदे गए थे तो मैं उनके साथ ही थी.
Most of these plants have been bought in front of me. As plants keep coming into the house, I learn their names and details. Dr. Saxena isn't always at home, but visitors keep coming in. It becomes necessary for me to show them around. I thought it best to give Dr. Saxena my support by learning about the plants.
मैंने यही अच्छा समझा कि मैं ये डॉक्टर सक्सेना का साथ दूं और हर प्लांट के बारे में सीखूं.
Over the years, the collection has grown in volume as well as splendor, with about 1,500 species in cultivation. It can boast of being one of the largest collections in Asia. Some of these plants are survivors from the early days of Dr. Saxena's hobby, creatures that are 25, even 30 years old, and flourishing. The scientific details about the plants have now become child's play for the latest subscriber to the fold. Shikhar, the Saxena's son, a 9th class student.
ये मेरे मम्मी पापा शुरू में ऊपर छत पे आया करते थे, तो कभी कभार मेरे को कहते थे कि पानी दो, तो मैं जरा सोचा करता था ये क्या चीज़ें होती हैं. इतने विभिन्न प्रकार की इन चीज़ों को देख कर मेरे मन में कई तरह की कोशिशें उठती थी.
My parents used to ask me sometimes to water the plants. I used to wonder about them. Looking at the variety of plants, I would feel very curious. One day I got pricked by some thorns, and that really nettled me. But the next day, when I came up, there was a beautiful flower blooming on that same cactus. This got me very interested in the plants, and that interest has grown continuously. I now know about each plant here and can take care of them all.
और मैं इनकी अच्छी तरह देखभाल भी करता हूँ. ये क्लिस्टोकैक्टस है, इसकी ये नीचे को जाता है.
This cyclocactus has stems which grow downwards. Hanging in the basket, I think it looks very beautiful. I like this plant very much.
ये मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है.
The acquisition and maintenance of this stupendous collection has been a long and lonely struggle for the Saxenas. They have, on occasion, appealed for official help, but none has been forthcoming. Dr. Saxena has had to carry on his own. with only the support of his kin. Even so, he has received acclaim for his experimental work on breeding hybrid and mutant varieties. At present, space problems prevent him from growing more than one plant of each species.
I live in one of the most polluted environments in the city of Delhi, and I just have a 200 square yard house, and my entire collection is on the terrace. Now I plan to build a house in Noida, which is, I've got a plot where I am going to establish all my mature plants right in the beginning, so that the entire house will be oriented towards the so-called succulent garden. And right now I have a huge collection, perhaps one of the largest collections at this kind of area and such small space. But when I get more space, I will be able to establish them.
This is one dream he has. If he does manage to move to some place with more room, he plans to go into this commercially, cultivating plants for sale. If that happens, his contagious obsession could catch on. That could prove a point in favor of the prickly cactus. It began as fairy tales do. Once upon a time, a production unit for a boutique was the first to come to the horse-cast village. That was in November 1987. 2.5 years later, the transformation is, if anything, far more incredible than a fairy tale. Hidden, remote corners, sometimes even the main street, give an idea of what the village was a little over 2 years ago. Just another of those rustic holdouts besieged by the city which had developed around it. Such sieges rarely last long. The arm of the city is long and usually carries a lot of money. For, making no bones about it, that is what has made the difference. All the changes that have taken place, that have metamorphosed Horse-Cast from a sleepy little village to a buzzing beehive of activity. Why it has worked is that in the bargain, nobody has lost. Except maybe tradition. And who cares for that?
ऐसा है कि करीब 2 साल पहले ये लोग हमारे गांव में आना शुरू हुए थे। तो पहले तो एक दो ने अपना वर्कशॉप शुरू किया था, फिर धीरे-धीरे इन लोगों का स्ट्रेंथ ज़्यादा होता रहा। तो किराया भी पहले ऐसा था, लोगों को पता नहीं था भी ये कमर्शियल हो जाएगा ऐसे।
These people started moving in here about 2 years ago. At first, there was one workshop here, and then their strength kept increasing. No one realized that it would get so commercialized. So rents were quite low at first. Now the whole village has been taken over, and it's difficult for us to stay here. With the government providing roads and other services, it's going to get worse. Even the lake at the back is being developed. So it looks like this is here to stay. During the day, it becomes very difficult for us. We can't hold any functions or move around in the village streets. The ladies of the village are used to veiling their faces and are unused to visitors. It's only after 6 in the evening, when the shops close, that we can breathe a little freely.
तो इसलिए सारा दिन घर में बंदे रहते हैं हम तो। अब शाम को 6 बजे के बाद ये बंद होते हैं, तब थोड़ा सांस आता है हमें।
The variety of establishments in the village is not very large. It's just that the ingenuity and artistic versatility of the shop owners has succeeded in giving most of the places a look of uniqueness. Broadly speaking, though,
There is basically a large range of clothes shops, most of them designer, ethnic and expensive, and a smattering of outlets selling handicrafts, arts and curios. There are a few actual standouts. The village gallery is a stark and reasonably unaffected art gallery. The exodus into the horse-cast village continues. Like hounds on the scent of an easy kill, would-be entrepreneurs continue to pour in. The streets are littered with construction material, and the racket of buildings coming up dominates.
हाँ, कंस्ट्रक्शन तो अभी भी चल रहा है. जो लोगों के पास खाली जमीन थी उस पर ये बना के शोरूम्स वगैरह दे रहे हैं लोगों.
Construction is still going on. These people who had land lying empty are building showrooms. Money is coming in. True, there have been benefits, but not all that much. Most people had already rented out their property. How much could they get from what little was left? The extent to which the villagers may seem to have prospered is quite exaggerated. Of course, the place has brightened up and is looking nice. Beyond the village in the protected deer park too, work is afoot. The DDA is constructing a large artificial lake to transform the area gradually into a regular tourist resort. On the banks of this forlorn stands the madrasa of Ferozshah Tughlaq, built in the 14th century. It is the last bastion of a tradition smothered under by the rising waters of commercialism. This has been designated a protected monument, thankfully. Otherwise, this would probably also, by now, have been converted to an ethnic designer boutique. If only you could smell what's on the screen, you'd like this program a lot more. The aroma in this place is truly heavenly. This is Karim's, a name which makes most stomachs sit up and take notice, which has had the ability to do this for more than 3/4 of a century now. The Karim saga began in 1913, when the Haji Karimuddin opened a small Neamat Kara, meaning eating place, near the Jama Masjid. The Haji's ancestors had been employed traditionally in the kitchens of the Mughal emperors, and he knew how to cook up meals fit for monarchs. With no monarchs, however, left in the land, he decided to make good of his talent in a different way. Suddenly, the food of kings was accessible to commoners, and the commoners loved it. The reputation of Karim's cooking grew. Along with it, grew the ranks of the customers, prompting the management to begin a visitor's book. This now sports distinguished names from every profession. Haji Karimuddin's oldest living descendant, his son Haji Nuruddin, can recall serving diverse people.
बहुत से लोगों ने यहाँ खाना खाया जिसके अंदर बहुत से ये हसन निज़ामी थे और मिर्ज़ा खैरुद्दीन थे, फैजाजुद्दीन थे यहाँ के सदर शहजादान के.
Many famous people of my time ate here, and I was acquainted with many of them. Our family used to work in the kitchens of the emperors. This work has been our family tradition. For this hotel, we all put in our bit. My father started it, I did what I could, and then taught the children the trade. Our methods are quite different from those of others.
In my days, prices used to be much lower. Meat would cost maybe 4 annas for a kilo, and venison at most 8 annas a kilo.
ये हाजल ये थे यहाँ बकर कसाब उनसे लिया करते थे हम तो 4 आने किलो गोश्त और हिरन का गोश्त 8 आने किलो है.
Emma Hussain, dining at Karim's, made a sketch in appreciation of his meal. This sketch has now become part of the Karim's logo. It is difficult to figure out what exactly the Karim's secret is. The family, 4 generations of which are now active in running the restaurants and hotels, are naturally quite vague about it. Whatever it is, the food here is still fit for royalty. And despite inflation, the prices are still such that Karim's remains accessible to the commoner, and the commoner still loves it. Next week, find out what the modern mud house is all about. Visit some places where rents are virtually non-existent, and finally, browse through a bazaar where anything goes for a price.